Hello and welcome to World Panorama, your weekly roundup of all the major news and events from across the world. I'm Teena Jha. Let's begin with this week's top stories. Protectionism will negatively impact development prospects of poor countries, warns Prime Minister Modi at the Africa Outreach session of the 10th BRICS Summit. Assures African nations of continued help from India, calls for more investment in digital infrastructure and skill development. Results of the 270 National Assembly seats declared in Pakistan. Imran Khan's party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, leads tally with 116 seats. After initially opposing the results, the former ruling party, PMLN, concedes defeat. India and Rwanda signed 8 agreements in the fields of defense, trade and agriculture. Prime Minister Modi announces $200 million lines of credit for Rwanda. And in a first, Prime Minister Modi addresses Ugandan Parliament. India-Uganda signed 4 MOUs, including one on defense cooperation. And the world witnesses longest blood moon eclipse of the 21st century. Event coincides with Mars's closest approach to Earth in 15 years. Monsoon clouds play a spoil sport in India, covering the moon most of the time. Well, Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party has emerged as the single largest in the Pakistan's general elections, winning 116 National Assembly seats out of the contested 270 parliamentary constituencies, according to the Election Commission's final results. The final announcement of the results of the polls held on the 25th of July has been marred by delays, causing anger among the leaders of losing parties, which levelled allegations of fraud. Jailed former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's Pakistan Muslim League-Nawaz with 64 seats and former President Asif Zardari's Pakistan People's Party with 43 seats are placed at number 2 and 3 respectively. And for the first time, a Hindu candidate, Mahesh Kumar Malani of the Pakistan People's Party, has won a seat in Pakistan. This is after 16 years when non-Muslims got the right to vote and contest on general seats in the country. Malani won by defeating 14 candidates. Dilip Sinha, former ambassador, joins us in the studio on the show to share his perspective on the Pakistan elections. A very warm welcome, sir, and welcome to World Panorama. You know, Imran Khan's party has emerged now as the single largest party, but a lot of media reports are claiming that it's not Imran Khan that has won, it's a victory for the military. What do you have to say about that?
Well, Imran Khan certainly enjoys the support of the military in Pakistan. And this victory that he has secured does have the blessings of the army. But one must also remember that all political parties in Pakistan have made their peace with the army.
Yeah.
In fact, many of them are creations of the army. If you go back to Bhutto's, the grandfather Bhutto was foreign minister of Ayub Khan in the time when he was a dictator in Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif himself became chief minister of Punjab in 1985 as a nominee of the army. He fought the elections later in non-party elections. So many political parties in Pakistan owe their origins to various kinds of deals with the army. And in any case, all of them have to accept the supremacy of the army in the structure of governance in Pakistan.
One thing that we want to understand from you is, why does the army need Imran Khan to rule Pakistan?
Well, one of the reasons is that Nawaz Sharif had obviously taken on the army. He has taken on the army earlier and he took on the army again. In his last term. And the army decided to go after him on charges of corruption. They used the judiciary to fix him. And now Nawaz Sharif is behind bars. So when the army looked around, they couldn't get down to PPP because PPP, after the death of Benazir Bhutto, has been considerably weakened. And in any case, the PPP has also had its own set of problems with the army. So the army turned to Imran Khan, who has taken rather strong positions against the US and on certain issues relating to fundamentalism, which suit the army in certain ways. And I don't know the internal dealings that they have had among them, but the army decided that he was the best candidate to push in these elections.
One good thing that has happened in Pakistan elections is that, Imran Khan has managed to break the duopoly of the PMLN and the PPP and in a way sort of ended dynastic politics and the corruption of, in fact, the politics of corruption in Pakistan. Now, do you think Imran Khan, he's been quite promising. We've seen in the election campaign, we've heard his post-election speech. What do you think, will Imran Khan be able to deliver that stability that Pakistan needs at the moment?
Well, that will have to be seen. He certainly has been able to break the duopoly, as you mentioned. This is the first time in almost 3 decades that these two political parties have not been able to form the government, and the government will be formed by PTI with a few allies. So that's a big change for Pakistan. Two prominent families have been moved out, and a new person comes who's in many respects a self-made man, because he came to prominence because of cricket and then moved on to politics. On corruption, I'm not too sure how much he'll be able to do, but he certainly has a clean image, which I think is a good platform to start with.
Yes, and that's been his major poll plank.
Exactly. That's been one of his important poll planks. So now, whether he'll be able to provide stability, one has to see, because stability in Pakistan, one must remember, comes from the army. So as long as he has support of the army, he's fine. It's when the clashes start with the army, as we have seen, PPP came in because of the support of the army, then moved out. And then they had differences and PPP had to make way. Later on, Nawaz Sharif also had a similar situation. So how long he'll be able to do the bidding of the army or avoid differences with the army will determine the extent of stability that he'll be able to provide to Pakistan.
Certainly. And coming to the India factor, Imran Khan says he wants to improve ties with India. But how should India take his peace overtures, considering, he's been recognized as a military man at the moment?
Well, I think we should approach him with an open mind. We should let him take the initiative, because as far as our current Prime Minister is concerned, he had taken the initiative 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when he took a very major, dramatic move to go to Pakistan and try and improve relations. That failed because Pakistan continued to persist with its terrorism. Now it is for Imran Khan to take the initiative. And when he does take the initiative, I think we should certainly give him a fair trial.
Yes.
Let's see what he has to offer. In the heat of the elections, people say many things that they change and they move on. So I think we should let that be the case. Whatever he has said earlier, whatever his background be, the fact that he has the support of the army is not such a major factor, because in any case we have dealt with the army all through. The problem really will be the terrorist elements, the jihadi elements, many of whom support Imran Khan, and Imran Khan quite happily enjoys their support. So that will be the problem for India, because we have always made it clear that we cannot have talks with terror.
Certainly.
And unless Imran Khan is able to rein in the jihadis, he shouldn't expect relations to improve with India.
The jihadis takes me to the point that, one notable factor in the Pakistan elections this time has been the extremist parties. Hafiz Saeed's party, in fact, has not performed well. So the people of Pakistan have spoken what they want, especially in terms of terrorism, because they are, in the end, they are the sufferers.
Well, I would approach that with a little bit of caution. True, Hafiz Saeed has not won and his party has been routed.
They haven't performed too well.
They haven't performed well. The Allahu Akbar party has not won any seat.
Yes.
But the fact is that in Pakistan, fundamentalism has been mainstreamed. The very fact that all the political parties are comfortable with fundamentalist parties and have at some time or the other aligned themselves with these parties, whether it is the PPP or it is Nawaz Sharif or it is currently PTI, means that for the people of Pakistan, it's not as if they are voting between secularism and fundamentalism. They are voting between fundamentalism and extreme fundamentalism.
Yes.
So there perhaps Hafiz Saeed has lost out, but one doesn't know.
All right, sir. Many thanks for joining us in the studio and sharing your perspective. So news reports suggest that Imran Khan has in fact started reaching out to leaders of different political parties and independent candidates to form the next government in Pakistan after his party won a majority of seats in parliament. Whether he will be able to bring back the country's economy on track and bring stability in the country, only time will tell. For the moment, let's move on to another story. The 10th BRICS Summit, which was held in Johannesburg, addressed several important issues. The theme of this year's summit was BRICS in Africa, And leaders of the 5 major emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, hailed the summit as a positive one. BRICS countries deliberated on international peace, security, global governance and trade issues, among several other issues as well. Here's a detailed report.
Leaders of BRICS emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa held the 10th edition of BRICS Summit in Johannesburg this week. This year's theme for the summit is BRICS in Africa, Collaboration for Inclusive Growth and Shared Prosperity in the 4th Industrial Revolution. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is representing India at the summit, the first bilateral tour by an Indian Prime Minister since 1997. Prime Minister Modi took part in the opening and closing sessions of the BRICS Summit in Johannesburg. He emphasized on constructive cooperation among member nations in facing new challenges from new technologies.
आजकल हो रहे और भविष्य में होने वाले टेक्नोलॉजी परिवर्तनों का ब्रिक्स देशों और पूरी दुनिया के लिए महत्व को ध्यान में रखते हुए मैं ये सुझाव देना चाहूंगा कि हमारे मंत्री इस विषय पर और विस्तार से विचार करें और आवश्यकता अनुसार विशेषज्ञों की भी मदद लें.
A joint Johannesburg declaration was also adopted at the summit. It outlined the issues ranging from combating the menace of terrorism to tackling the tendencies of unilateralism and protectionism. Representatives from the BRICS countries also acknowledged that global trade was facing unprecedented challenges and urged World Trade Organization members to honor their commitments to the multilateral trading system. Prime Minister Modi said the world needs reformed multilateralism and also a reformed United Nations.
The Prime Minister emphasized that the objective of preserving multilateralism and the multilateral world order is not to maintain the status quo. He reminded the leaders that BRICS came together 10 years ago for change and for reform of the world order. Therefore, he said, what we need today is reformed multilateralism.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has urged BRICS countries to deepen strategic partnership and work to open up a second golden decade at the plenary session of the BRICS. President Xi called on the countries to work with the rest of the international community for an open, inclusive, clean and beautiful world that enjoys lasting peace, universal security and common prosperity. South African President Ramaphosa highlighted the rising unilateralism and protectionism in the world and their negative impact on emerging market economies and developing countries.
At the same time, we must work together at the United Nations, the G20 and the World Trade Organization to safeguard the rule-based multilateral trading regime, promote trade and investment liberalization and facilitation, and reject protectionism outright. BRICS membership are reacting jointly to the threats and challenges of our economy unclear. We are cooperating in fighting terrorism, extremism, drug trafficking, trans-border organized crimes, and BRICS has unique play in the global economy.
Meanwhile, BRICS nations have called for the much-touted 4th Industrial Revolution to be embraced in order to grow the crucial sectors of member states' economies. The 4th Industrial Revolution could be used as a catalyst to deepen industrial cooperation within the BRICS member states and to attract foreign direct investment.
At China's initiative, this BRICS summit has decided to establish a partnership on new industrial revolution. We must ride the latest trend of development, fully tap into complementarity and build up synergy to realize inclusive, interconnected and innovation-driven development.
Several African leaders were invited by the host nation South Africa to discuss ways of pursuing inclusive growth in the continent with BRICS heads of state on the back of a successful BRICS summit. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
With that, time for a very short break on the program. We'll be right back.
Tales that inspire. Stories of social change. A salute to diversity. Promoting public discourse. Events that motivate. Inspiring the innovative spirit. Watch Rajya Sabha television documentaries.
Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has extended $200 million line of credit to Rwanda for its economic development, signed a defense cooperation agreement, and will soon open a high commission as part of India's efforts to bolster the strategic ties with the fast-developing East African country. The Prime Minister also held wide-ranging talks with the President of Uganda and also addressed the Ugandan Parliament. Let's get you the highlights from his two-nation Africa tour. Prime Minister Modi concluded his four-day official visit to Rwanda and Uganda. On day one, Prime Minister Modi visited the Kigali Genocide Memorial, which is the final resting place of more than 250,000 victims of genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. India and Rwanda have signed 8 agreements following delegation-level talks between Prime Minister Modi and Rwandan President Paul Kagame in Kigali. The agreements were signed in the fields of defense, trade, agriculture, leather and allied products and dairy. India also extended 2 lines of credit of $100 million each, one for development of industrial parks and Kigali Special Economic Zone, and the other for 3 agricultural projects in Rwanda. Prime Minister Modi assured Rwanda that India will continue to back the African country's development. The Rwandan president said Prime Minister Modi's visit represents a milestone between the two countries.
आज हमने $200 million के लाइन ऑफ क्रेडिट और ट्रेनिंग के विषय पर समझौते किए हैं। आज हमने नए क्षेत्रों जैसे लेदर और डेयरी रिसर्च सहित दोनों देशों के बीच सहयोग के विभिन्न क्षेत्रों पर भी चर्चा की है। हम दोनों देशों के बीच संबंधों को आने वाले समय में और अधिक उच्च स्तर पर ले जाने के लिए आशान्वित हैं।
This visit, the first by the Indian Prime Minister, represents a milestone in the long-standing friendship and cooperation between Rwanda and India. Our two countries share similar ambitions for the prosperity and well-being of our citizens. We appreciate India's support to Rwanda's development agenda.
Prime Minister Modi also met a gathering of Indian community in Rwanda. While addressing them, he said the Indian diaspora is making a mark all over the world and they are the country's Rashtraduts. He informed the gathering that the long-pending demand of having an Indian High Commission in Rwanda will soon be fulfilled.
और ये खबर दुनिया भर से आती है। भारतीय समुदाय का ये व्यवहार दुनिया के किसी देश में किसी को अखरता नहीं है। अच्छे लगते, भारतीय लोगों को अच्छे लगते हैं। अनेक प्रकार से हर हिंदुस्तानी दुनिया में जहां भी है वो राजदूत से भी बढ़कर के राष्ट्रदूत है।
Prime Minister Modi addressed leading CEOs from both countries in capital Kigali. He said Rwanda holds the key to all doors in Africa and called for enhancing business ties with the fast-developing East African country. He also reaffirmed India's commitment to Rwanda's quest for national development.
रवांडा जो आधुनिकता की दिशा में जा रहा है, चाहे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, चाहे रूरल डेवलपमेंट हो, चाहे इकोनॉमिकल एक्टिविटी हो, यहाँ जो चीजें प्रोडक्टों का ग्लोबल मार्केट चाहते हैं, ये सारे विषय ऐसे हैं कि जिसमें भारत के व्यापार और उद्योग जगत के लोग मिलकर के बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं.
In an unusual gift, Prime Minister Modi also gifted 200 cows to poor villages in Rwanda to support President Kagame's initiative for poverty reduction and tackling childhood malnutrition. The program was launched in 2006 to provide 1 cow per poor family for their nutritional and financial security. Prime Minister Modi arrived in Uganda on the second leg of his 3-nation Africa tour. The Prime Minister held wide-ranging talks with the President of Uganda and discussed ways to strengthen bilateral ties. In a joint press statement, the Prime Minister extended line of credit worth nearly $200 million to Uganda, in addition to existing $10 billion line of credit. India promised to enhance cooperation in energy infrastructure, agriculture and dairy sectors, and agreements related to defence, visa exemption for diplomatic and official passport holders, cultural exchange and healthcare were also signed.
हम युगांडा की आवश्यकताओं और प्राथमिकताओं के अनुसार अपना सहयोग जारी रखेंगे. युगांडा की जनता के प्रति हमारी मित्रता की अभिव्यक्ति के रूप में भारत सरकार ने युगांडा कैंसर इंस्टीट्यूट कंपाला को एक अत्याधुनिक कैंसर थेरेपी मशीन गिफ्ट करने का निर्णय लिया है.
Prime Minister Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to address the Parliament of Uganda. While addressing the Ugandan Parliament, Modi outlined 10 guiding principles to deepen India's engagement with Africa to help in its economic growth and tackle challenges like terrorism and climate change.
Our economic and international partnerships are over the past 7 decades have been promoted as much by economic impulse as by the moral principles and emotional bonds. We sought a fair and equitable access to markets and resources. We fought together to make development.
The Prime Minister said Africa can benefit from the experience of India's digital revolution, which can improve the delivery of public services, education, health, spread digital literacy, expand financial inclusion and mainstream the marginalized. This is the first visit by the Prime Minister to South Africa after the new government assumed office there, and comes during a year that marks the 125th anniversary of the train Pietermaritzburg incident involving Mahatma Gandhi. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya Sabha TV. And let's now take a look at all the other international updates in Globe Watch. The UAE has been ordered by the highest UN court to immediately allow Qatari families to reunite. The court imposed the measure before it hears in full a discrimination case which was filed by Qatar in June 2017. The UAE, along with Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and Egypt, imposed a land, air and sea blockade against Qatar and severed ties with it. Qatar then filed a case at the International Court of Justice, accusing the UAE of violating international laws by expelling thousands of Qataris. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg's fortune took a more than $15 billion hit this month. The social media company suffered the biggest one-day wipeout in US stock market history, a day before executives forecast years of lower profit margins. At least 16 brokerages cut their price targets. Shares closed down almost 19% at $176.26, wiping more than $120 billion off the company's value. A fast-growing Northern California wildfire killed 2 firefighters after high winds drove it into the city of Redding, prompting mass evacuations, destroying scores of homes and threatening some 5,000 other dwellings and businesses. Flames raging in California's scenic Shasta Trinity area erupted late Thursday into a firestorm that jumped across the Sacramento River and swept into the western side of Redding, home to about 90,000 people, forcing residents to flee for their lives. The death toll from the deadliest wildfire, which broke out in a small seaside resort near the Greek capital of Athens on the 23rd of July, has increased to 87. The fire broke out in Meiti, which lies in the east of Athens. The government has declared it as the deadliest tragedy in a decade. Sky watchers around the world witnessed the longest blood moon eclipse of the 21st century on Friday night. During total eclipse, the moon turned a striking shade of red or ruddy brown. According to NASA, the total eclipse lasted for 1 hour, 42 minutes and 57 seconds. The moon spent a total of 3 hours and 54 minutes in the Earth's umbral shadow. The longest blood moon eclipse this century coincided with Mars's closest approach to Earth in 15 years. Part of the eclipse was visible from Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Australia, most of Asia and South America. And before we wrap up, here's a look at the best lunar eclipse pictures from around the world. You picture this as we take your leave. Thanks for your time.